3,000 years have passed since Earth fell to the Galactic Council, a sweeping force that reshaped the galaxy's power structure, imposing their will upon humanity and stripping away the last remnants of Earth's former glory. The once proud planet, a beacon of innovation and rebellion, had become a shadow of its former self, its cities abandoned and its people scattered across the farthest reaches of space. But what the Council did not anticipate, what no one saw coming, was humanity's resilience, a trait that had been overlooked for far too long. In the dark recesses of space, on a forgotten world, a new chapter in humanity's struggle begins. Deep within the remnants of an ancient underground facility hidden beneath the surface of a hostile planet, a small group of survivors uncovers a long-forgotten truth, a truth that could change everything, a truth that could reignite humanity's fight for freedom. The survivors are no longer the broken remnants of a defeated race. They are now something more. The evolution of humanity, spurred by centuries of hardship and alien rule, has led to an unexpected force and evolved species, more capable, more cunning, and more dangerous than ever before. Among them is a leader, a figure whose very presence commands respect. A quiet strength lies behind their piercing gaze, a leader who had watched as their people were subjugated, who had seen the fall of their ancestors, and who now stands at the precipice of humanity's resurgence. This leader, though burdened by the weight of years, has never lost the spark of defiance. It flickers within them like a flame that refuses to be snuffed out. The remnants of Earth, once fractured by war, now lie unified under a single cause. They have learned the hard lessons of the past, lessons that only time and loss could teach. They understand the price of peace imposed by an external force, and now they are ready to take back what is theirs. But there is one obstacle in their way: the Galactic Council, a vast empire of alien races united under a common banner, an empire that has crushed countless civilizations under its heel. The Council is not a foe easily defeated. Their technology is far beyond anything humanity has ever known, and their control over the galaxy is absolute. Yet, even in the face of such overwhelming power, humanity refuses to bow down. Something has changed. The people who were once hunted, exploited, and oppressed now stand tall, united by a shared vision of a future where humanity can live free once again. It is no longer about survival. It is about reclaiming their rightful place in the galaxy. But as they prepare for the coming storm, as the remnants of Earth's finest gather their forces, they learn that the Galactic Council has not been idle. In fact, they are well aware of humanity's resurgence. The Council has been watching, and they have their own plans that could mean the end of humanity's struggle before it even begins. The leader of the Resistance, having discovered the ancient facility and its hidden technology, rallies the survivors to take one final stand, but they know the odds are stacked against them. They know that every step forward may bring them closer to the edge of annihilation. And yet, the spark of defiance burns brighter than ever. They know that humanity's strength lies not in their numbers, not in their technology, but in something far more powerful, something that has never been understood by the Council: their unwavering will to survive. As they prepare to launch their first strike, a sudden shift in the galaxy's balance threatens to tear everything apart. The Galactic Council is not the only force that has been watching humanity. There are others, other civilizations, who have also taken note of Earth's struggle and who may have their own agendas. Allies or enemies, it's impossible to tell. But one thing is certain. The coming battle will not just determine the fate of humanity. It will determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The leader stands at the helm of a ship, gazing out at the swirling expanse of space. The countdown has begun. The time for waiting is over. The first strike is imminent, but a chill runs down their spine as a voice, cold and distant, crackles over the comms. "We've been watching you," the voice says, "and we know what you're about to do. But be warned, you are not ready for what's coming." The leader's hand tightens around the controls, their jaw set in grim determination. They know the enemy is close. They know the battle ahead will be like no other. But this is humanity's moment. The spark of rebellion, the will to fight, will burn brighter than ever before. As the ship rockets into the unknown, the leader's thoughts flash to the generations that came before them, their ancestors, the ones who built Earth into the great power it once was. They were the architects of a vision of freedom, of unity, and of strength. Humanity may have fallen, but they are not defeated. The fire within them has been rekindled, and it will not be extinguished. The leader sat in the cold, metallic cockpit, staring at the vast stretch of stars outside. A million thoughts raced through their mind as the ship hurtled toward its destination. The voice on the comms had rattled them, the words sharp and unnerving. "We've been watching you." The message was clear. Someone knew what they were planning. Someone with power and resources they couldn't yet understand. It was impossible to ignore the gravity of the situation. Humanity had been living in the shadow of the Galactic Council for far too long, their every move monitored, every rebellion crushed with swift efficiency. But now, as the first wave of resistance rose from the ashes of Earth, the tide seemed to be shifting. There was something different this time. There had to be. But who was the voice on the comms? Was it the Council? Or something else? The leader's grip tightened on the controls as they pushed the ship into higher speed, determined not to let fear or doubt take hold. It wasn't just their life on the line, it was the fate of humanity itself. The resistance movement had spent years quietly gathering strength, building alliances, and, most importantly, uncovering secrets long buried beneath the surface of Earth and beyond. The discovery of the hidden facility had changed everything. The technology it contained could be the key to toppling the Council's rule. But, as with all things of great power, it came at a price. A price they couldn't yet comprehend. The leader's thoughts drifted back to the day they first learned of the ancient facility. It had been a fluke, a forgotten transmission intercepted by a small rebel ship on the fringes of known space. A series of cryptic coordinates had led them to a desolate world, where the remains of an old Earth base lay hidden beneath layers of dust and time. No one had known it was there, not even the Council. It was a relic of a forgotten war, one that took place long before the current galactic order had solidified. When they had uncovered the facility's true purpose, it was like opening a door to a new reality. The technology inside was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, alien in origin, yet familiar enough to be understood. It was a game changer. But it also came with risks. The Council would not let this discovery go unnoticed. They had already wiped out entire civilizations to maintain their dominance. The thought of a rising human threat was one they wouldn't tolerate. As the leader pondered the implications, the communications panel buzzed again. This time, the voice was even colder, more insistent. "We've seen what you've done. The facility, the technology. But you don't understand what you're dealing with. You think you're ready for this? You think you can challenge the Galactic Council? The leader's mind raced, their pulse quickening. Was this a warning? A threat? Or something more? They knew the Council's reach was vast, their intelligence networks intricate. But this felt different. The voice seemed to know too much, too intimately. It wasn't just a response to their movement. It was something more personal. Someone knew their every move, their every decision. The leaders switched off the comms, their minds spinning. There was no turning back now. They had already committed. The resistance had already gathered a fleet, though small and ragtag, ready to strike. And the ancient technology they had uncovered would be the linchpin of the plan. It could give them the advantage they needed to strike back, to push the Council out of Earth's orbit and begin the long, difficult process of reclaiming their home. But the more they thought about it, the more questions arose. Who was the mysterious voice on the comms? How could they have known so much about the hidden facility? And why were they so confident in their claim that humanity wasn't ready for what was coming? Suddenly, a sharp alarm blared throughout the ship, snapping the leader out of their thoughts. The ship shuddered as it encountered a disturbance in space, a rippling anomaly, like a wave moving through the fabric of reality itself. The instruments flickered, the controls glitching momentarily as the ship veered off course. The leader's heart raced as they fought to regain control. Something was happening, something they hadn't anticipated. The anomaly grew stronger, its force pulling at the ship's hull. For a moment, the leader thought they might lose control entirely, but then the ship stabilized, the strange energy field dissipating. The calm that followed was unnerving. And then the voice returned. This is your final warning. You're playing a dangerous game. The Galactic Council will not allow you to succeed. You're not just up against them. You're up against the universe itself. The leader's mind spun, but their resolve only grew stronger. Whoever or whatever this voice belonged to, it was clear they were no ordinary adversary. But the resistance wasn't just about defeating an alien empire. It was about something much larger. It was about the survival of a species, the reclaiming of a lost world, and the restoration of humanity's place in the stars. In the depths of the ship, the rest of the resistance was preparing for the upcoming battle. The leader had surrounded themselves with the best of what humanity had left. There were no generals here, no politicians, only survivors. People who had lost everything to the Council, and yet still stood tall, determined to make the galaxy remember Earth. The crew had been gathering in the war room, strategizing, running simulations, and preparing for the day when they would finally strike. But despite the best of their plans, there was always that nagging fear. The unknown. The fear of being outmatched. The fear that the Council's reach was too vast, their influence too great. "Sir," a voice called from the corner of the room. It was one of the Resistance's top engineers, a woman with an uncanny ability to fix any problem, no matter how dire. "We've finished analyzing the data from the facility. It's worse than we thought." The leader turned, their heart sinking. "What do you mean?" "The technology," she continued, her voice grim. "It's not just a weapon. It's a beacon." "A beacon?" The leader frowned, confusion clouding their thoughts. "Yes. It's broadcasting a signal that's been active for centuries." The leader's eyes widened. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, locking eyes with them, "that we're not the only ones who've been watching the galaxy. Someone else has been listening." And in that moment, the leader understood. The voice on the comms, the anomaly, The warning, it all made sense now. The fight for Earth was only the beginning. There were forces out there, far more ancient and powerful than the Galactic Council. The realization hit like a sudden wave. A beacon. Humanity's efforts to rise again, to strike back at the Council, had been broadcast to someone or something else. The leader's mind raced as the implications of that discovery settled in. They had been fighting to reclaim Earth, to reclaim their home, but now they understood that they weren't the only players in this game. Something else was coming, something far older, far more dangerous than the Council. The voice, the anomaly, the warning, it all pointed to the same truth. This beacon, hidden for centuries, had been sending out a signal. The very moment humanity's resurgence had begun, it had triggered something. And now, as the days passed, the resistance had grown increasingly aware of the strange, unsettling signs. Shadows moving in the distance, distant transmissions intercepted but never fully decoded, a subtle shift in the air. A presence, something far beyond the Galactic Council, was drawing near. The leader paced the war room, their eyes darting over the data, their minds struggling to keep up with the weight of what was happening. The crew had been preparing for a direct confrontation with the Council. They had their plan in place, their weapons, their ships, their resolve. But none of that seemed to matter now. They were no longer just facing a tyrannical empire. They were facing something unknown, something that might make the Council look like an afterthought. "Are we ready?" the leader asked, their voice steely, though they felt the flicker of doubt deep inside. A chorus of voices answered. "We are, Commander. The fleet is prepared. The first strike can begin at any moment." But even as the words were spoken, a nagging feeling gnawed at the leader's gut. They could feel it. Deep within their bones, something was coming. A new enemy. An enemy whose arrival would change everything. A sudden jolt interrupted their thoughts. The ship shuddered violently, throwing the crew off balance. The lights flickered, and alarms blared across the command deck. It wasn't the usual turbulence they encountered in deep space. This was something else. The leader's pulse quickened, and they moved swiftly to the controls, trying to regain control over the ship. But the screens remained dark, the systems unresponsive. A voice crackled through the comms, cold and distant. "It's too late." The leader's heart skipped a beat. The voice was unmistakable. It was the same one that had warned them earlier. But this time, there was no hiding the malice in its tone. "You think you can take down the Council? You think you can reclaim Earth? You've made a grave mistake, Commander." The room fell silent. No one moved, no one spoke. The gravity of the situation hung in the air like an oppressive storm cloud. "Who are you?" the leader demanded, trying to steady their shaking hands. "What do you want?" There was a pause on the other end of the comms. And then, the voice spoke again, its words slow and deliberate. "We are the Anointed. We've been watching you. Your struggle is admirable, but you misunderstand your place in the galaxy. Your time is over. You belong to the Council now, and soon you will understand what happens to those who defy them." The leader's mind spun. The Anointed. The name was unfamiliar, but the gravity of the situation was clear. Whoever or whatever they were, they had far more influence than anyone could have imagined. And now, they were closing in. Suddenly, the ship jolted again, more violently this time. Warning lights flashed red, and the hull groaned under the pressure. The systems were failing. The leader could barely hear their own thoughts over the deafening sirens blaring in the background. "Commander," one of the crew shouted, eyes wide with panic. "We've lost contact with the rest of the fleet. The entire system is going dark. The beacon, it's activating." The leader's heart sank. They had no time. The Anointed were here. The Galactic Council was no longer their only concern. The struggle for Earth, for humanity's future, had just escalated beyond anything they had prepared for. The ship lurched again, this time sending the leader stumbling into the control panel. They struggled to regain their balance, their eyes scanning the chaos unfolding before them. But before they could react, a massive explosion rocked the ship, throwing everyone off their feet. The room was plunged into darkness, and the air crackled with static. For a moment, everything was still. The alarms had gone silent. The ship hung in the void of space, its systems crippled, its crew uncertain of what had just happened. The leader's heart raced as they crawled to their feet, trying to make sense of the situation. Their mind raced. What could it be? What force could cause such destruction in an instant? Then the answer came, piercing through the silence like a blade. A flash of light. A massive wave of energy, unlike anything they had ever seen. It was coming from the direction of the beacon. The leader's eyes widened as they realized the full extent of what was happening. The Anointed were not just watching, they were here. They had arrived. As the wave of energy surged forward, the Resistance's ship was caught in its grip. Systems failed, one by one. Communications were lost. The leader felt a sickening sense of helplessness wash over them as they watched their crew struggle to keep control. And then, through the chaos, a new voice emerged, one that chilled the leader to their core. "You have been warned. The Anointed do not tolerate resistance." The leader's grip on the controls tightened. They had to do something. They couldn't let this be the end. But even as they fought to regain control of the ship, they knew in their heart that this was just the beginning. The stakes had never been higher. Earth's future was on the line. Humanity's future was on the line. And they had no idea how they could possibly survive this new threat. The energy pulse surged again, this time stronger, more focused. The leader's vision blurred as the ship began to break apart under the strain. And then, as the room went dark, a single thought echoed in their mind. If humanity was to survive this, they would have to face their greatest enemy yet, and they would have to do it alone. The ship groaned, its systems failing one by one as the waves of energy continued to pulse outward from the mysterious force that had descended upon them. The leader's thoughts were hazy, their vision blurred by the flickering lights and the overwhelming pressure of the situation. The crew struggled around them, trying to maintain control, but it was clear that they were losing the battle. The pulse of energy surged again, the ship's hull trembling as though it might tear itself apart. But then, through the chaos, a new sound broke through. A crackling distortion on the comms. At first, it was a garbled mess, nothing but static. But then, it cleared, and a voice familiar yet unsettling emerged from the noise. The leader's heart skipped. It was the same voice that had warned them, that had taunted them with their impending defeat. "You thought you could fight the Council, the Anointed." The voice sneered. "You've made a grave mistake. You think this battle is about Earth? About your precious homeworld? You're nothing but pawns in a much larger game." The leader gritted their teeth, fighting against the dizziness threatening to overwhelm them. They couldn't let the voice win. Not now. Not when everything they had fought for was slipping away. "What do you want from us?" the leader managed to rasp, their voice hoarse with the strain. The response was chilling, almost too calm for the moment. You think the Anointed are the greatest threat you face? That the Council is the true enemy? You are wrong. There's something much older, much more dangerous than anything you've ever encountered. The leader's stomach twisted. What could be worse than this? The Anointed had already proven themselves capable of devastating destruction. Council was a power unto itself, ruling with an iron fist over countless star systems. What could possibly overshadow them? Before they could process the implications of this new revelation, another surge of energy hit the ship. This time, it wasn't just the ship's hull that felt the strain. The very fabric of space itself seemed to ripple around them. The leader's mind raced. It was as though the laws of physics were being rewritten in real time. What kind of weapon or force could do something like this? Could this be the arrival of the ancient enemy the voice was alluding to? The ship's systems flickered back to life, but only for a moment. Then, the screens went black again, leaving them in the suffocating silence of the failing vessel. The leader glanced around the control room, the faces of their crew illuminated by the dim emergency lights, their expressions filled with fear and confusion. They were running out of time. "Commander, we can't hold much longer," a voice called from across the room. It was one of the pilots, her voice strained. "The energy readings are off the charts. If we don't break free now, we're going to be ripped apart." But before the leader could give an order, the ship lurched again. This time, it was different. A low hum filled the air, growing louder, resonating deep within their bones. The ship trembled as if some unseen force was pulling it into the very heart of the anomaly. The leader's breath caught in their throat as they realized what was happening. The beacon, the pulse. It wasn't just some weapon or shield, it was a gateway. A rift in space-time. A portal. In that moment, everything came rushing to the forefront of their mind, the decades of struggle, the countless battles fought in the shadows, the hope that humanity could rise again. And now, it was all coming down to this single, impossible moment. What was on the other side of that rift? What would they face once the ship was pulled through? "We can't escape," the engineer shouted, frantically typing at the controls. "The gravity well is too strong. We're being dragged in." The leader took a deep breath, steadying themselves. They had to make a choice, now. There was no way to fight against this force. They could feel it, the pull, the weight of it bearing down on them. And then, just as they were about to issue the order to abandon ship, the rift began to crackle and pulse with energy. A massive form began to take shape within the storm, dark and formless, like a shadow emerging from the void. The leader's eyes widened as the figure took shape. It was something alive, and it was moving toward them. The comms crackled again, but this time the voice was different. It was no longer just a warning, it was a command. "This is your final chance. Surrender now, and we may spare what remains of your species." The leader's chest tightened, their mind racing. Was this the ancient enemy, the force that had been hinted at? And what did they mean by sparing humanity? The thought of surrender made their skin crawl. No, they couldn't give in. They couldn't allow humanity to be subjugated once again. Not after everything they had been through, not after all the bloodshed. But what choice did they have? The ship was falling apart, the crew on the brink of panic, and that monstrous shape was looming closer, its presence overwhelming. The very air seemed to vibrate with the power of whatever was on the other side of the rift. As if in response to their internal turmoil, a low, guttural roar echoed through the ship's hull. The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, everything went silent. The leader's heart pounded in their chest. This wasn't just a force. It was a sentient being, something that had been waiting, watching, perhaps even controlling the events that had led them to this moment. And then the figure emerged fully from the rift. It was immense, its form shifting, as if it existed in multiple dimensions at once. It was a creature of darkness, its shape impossible to define, but its presence undeniable. It moved with purpose, its cold eyes locking onto the leader, sending a wave of dread crashing over them. "We are the Harbingers," the voice said, reverberating in the leader's mind, bypassing the comms entirely. "And your time has come." The leader staggered back, the weight of the situation pressing in on them. Their pulse raced. The stakes had never been higher. Humanity's fight was no longer just against the Council or the Anointed. It was against something older, something far more powerful, something that was about to lay claim to everything humanity had ever fought for. And in that moment, the leader understood the true scale of the battle they faced. They weren't just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for their very existence. The Harbinger's presence filled the ship, a suffocating force that pressed down on everything. Its form pulsed with an eerie, unnatural light, its shape constantly shifting as though it existed across dimensions. The leader could feel the weight of its gaze, even though they couldn't fully comprehend what they were looking at. It was like staring into the void itself, something ancient, something beyond their understanding. "We are the Harbingers," the voice echoed again, now filling the very air around them. "And your species is a mere footnote in the history of the galaxy. You have no place in this universe." The leader staggered back, heart racing. The ship trembled beneath them, and the crew was scrambling, trying desperately to regain control, but nothing seemed to work. The rift pulsed stronger, sending waves of energy through the ship. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being twisted. "Commander," the pilot shouted, panic creeping into their voice. "We're being pulled toward it. There's nothing we can do. We're going to be consumed." But the leader stood still, their mind racing. There was no escaping the rift now, no fleeing from the Harbinger. The only chance they had left was to confront it, to fight back. The voice of the Harbinger was like thunder, reverberating in the leader's skull. "You cannot stop us. We are the end. You are nothing." But the leader wasn't listening. In that moment, something clicked inside them. The ship's systems were failing, yes, but they weren't powerless. The ancient technology they had uncovered hidden deep within the facility on Earth had always been the key. They hadn't understood it completely at first, but now, in the face of this impossible threat, they realized its true purpose. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a conduit, a bridge, and they could use it to strike back. "Listen to me," the leader shouted, their voice cutting through the oppressive atmosphere. "This ends now. We won't let you have this galaxy." With a trembling hand, they accessed the control panel, overriding the failing systems. The beacon, still pulsing with that ominous energy, was now synchronized with the ship's systems. It was a gamble, a dangerous move, but it was their only shot. The Harbinger seemed to sense what was happening. It let out a low, mocking chuckle, its presence intensifying. "Foolish. You think you can use that technology against us?" But the leader didn't flinch. They focused all their energy on the controls, overriding the last fail-safes. The technology from Earth hummed to life, channeling the power of the rift itself. The ship's systems surged with energy, enough to send a shockwave through the rift. But there was something else, something unexpected. The ship wasn't just amplifying the rift, it was destabilizing it. The energy surged violently, shooting through the Harbinger like a bolt of lightning. The creature howled, its form flickering, its shape distorting as the rift itself began to unravel. The crew scrambled to hold on as the ship rocked violently from the backlash. The leader could barely keep their grip on the controls, but they pushed through the pain and fear. They couldn't let up now. For a brief moment, the Harbinger's form seemed to falter, its energy splintering as the rift began to collapse in on itself. The leader saw the creature's eyes, those cold, predatory eyes, flashing with disbelief. It was as though it had never expected this kind of resistance, never anticipated being outmatched by mere humans. And then, with a deafening crack, the rift collapsed. The ship was thrown backward, hurtling away from the swirling vortex. The Harbinger's form disintegrated, its energy dissipating into the void like smoke. The ship lurched, spinning wildly before stabilizing in the aftermath of the cosmic storm. Silence. The crew, dazed and battered, began to recover, their breaths shallow and ragged as they processed what had just happened. The ship had survived. The rift was gone. And the Harbinger, it was gone. But there was no time to celebrate. The leader turned to the view screen, heart pounding as they looked out into the vast expanse of space. The fleet, the rest of humanity's resistance, was still waiting for their command. The leader knew they had a choice to make. They could press forward, reclaim Earth, fight back against the Council's stranglehold on their homeworld. Or they could take a step back, regroup, and try to make sense of the unfathomable forces they had just encountered. But as they prepared to give the order, a strange energy filled the air again. It was subtle at first, just a hum, a faint vibration through the ship's hull. The leader's eyes narrowed as they turned to the comms system. "This is Earth," a voice crackled over the comms, clear and steady. "We have received your signal. Prepare for extraction." The leader's heart skipped a beat. Earth? But how? They quickly scanned the coordinates, their mind racing. The voice on the comms was familiar, but something wasn't right. Earth had been lost to the Galactic Council. It had been abandoned, its people scattered across the stars. There was no way anyone on Earth should be alive. And then the final twist came. The signal wasn't just a message, it was a trap. As the leader processed the information, the realization hit them. This wasn't an ally reaching out to help them. It was the Council. The system blinked on the screen. "Commander, they're here. It's a fleet, and it's much larger than we thought." The leader's chest tightened as they watched the view screen flicker. A massive fleet appeared on the horizon, vast and looming. The Council had come, and they were bringing everything they had. The Resistance had won one battle, but the war was far from over. And as the leader prepared for what was to come, one question echoed through their mind: was humanity truly ready to face the full might of the Council, or would they be forced to surrender once again? The ship lurched once again, the crew clinging to their stations as the view screen revealed the ominous sight of the Council's fleet closing in. It was enormous, a towering armada of warships, each one far larger than any vessel they had ever encountered. The leader's heart pounded in their chest, the weight of the situation crashing over them. They had just defeated the Harbingers, something thought to be invincible, and now they faced an even greater foe. But one truth remained: they couldn't back down now. "Commander, we're outnumbered," the communications officer spoke up, his voice filled with tension. "We can't win this battle with just us." The leader's thoughts raced. The Resistance had already put everything into this fight. If they gave in to the Council now, humanity would be swallowed whole, not just by the Council's military might, but by their oppressive will. Every inch of the galaxy would fall under their control, and Earth would remain nothing more than a memory. That couldn't happen. The leaders stood tall, their eyes fixed on the vast fleet that loomed in front of them. Despite the odds, despite the overwhelming force arrayed against them, they had one thing the Council didn't: the power of unity. The Resistance had brought together survivors from all corners of the galaxy, and that strength, that determination to reclaim what was rightfully theirs, could not be underestimated. "We fight, no matter what," the leader said, their voice steady, resolute. "We've come this far, and we won't let humanity's spirit be crushed now." There was no hesitation from the crew. They knew what was at stake. They had fought too hard, sacrificed too much. They were ready to give everything, and the thought of surrender was anathema to them. The ship's weapons systems powered up, and the leader activated the communication link to the fleet. The Resistance forces were spread thin, scattered across different star systems, but they had to unite for this final stand. "All units, engage," the leader commanded. "We fight together, or we fall alone." A roar of agreement came through the comms, each ship in the fleet acknowledging the order. The leader's hands tightened around the controls as the fleet surged forward, the ships powering up their weapons, the glow of energy beams lighting up the dark void of space. The battle began in a blur of chaos. The Council's ships fired first, massive energy blasts cutting through the darkness, forcing the Resistance to scatter and take evasive maneuvers. The sky lit up with explosions, and the sound of war rang out, the hum of engines and the crackling of laser fire filling the air. But the Resistance fought back with every ounce of strength they had. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their future. The leader's eyes darted around the screen, tracking enemy ships, issuing orders. Every moment felt like a lifetime. The chaos of battle swirled around them, but through the disorienting flurry, the leader saw something they hadn't expected. The Council's fleet, so massive and terrifying, was beginning to falter. Their ships were slower, more cumbersome than the nimble vessels of the Resistance. The Council's arrogance had blinded them to their own weaknesses. They had underestimated the resolve of humanity. "We're breaking through," one of the pilots shouted, her voice filled with disbelief. "The Council's ships, they're retreating." The leader allowed themselves a brief moment of hope, but they couldn't let their guard down. This battle was far from over. The tide had shifted, but there was no guarantee of victory. The Council wasn't going to simply give up, and they still had the final card to play. Just as the Resistance began to gain ground, a new ship emerged from the heart of the enemy fleet, larger than anything they had seen before. It was a massive warship, its dark hull gleaming ominously in the light of the explosions around it. Its presence was overwhelming, a symbol of the Council's ultimate power. "This is it," the leader murmured, their stomach tightening. This ship was different. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol of everything they had fought against. And now, it was standing between them and their future. The leader gave the order to target the massive warship, but they knew that this would be no easy feat. They had to take it down, or else the Resistance would never stand a chance. The battle raged on, the energy blasts from the warship hitting their ships with pinpoint accuracy. The leader watched in horror as one by one, ships in their fleet were blasted into nothingness. But even in the face of the Council's overwhelming firepower, The resistance pressed on. They had to. Their unity, their refusal to bow to tyranny, was what set them apart. And as the leader watched the screen, they saw something that gave them renewed strength. The enemy was vulnerable. Despite its size, the massive warship had weaknesses, gaps in its defense, areas where it was more exposed. "Prepare for a direct assault," the leader barked. "All units, concentrate fire on the central core. We can break through if we hit it hard enough." The final push began. The Resistance's remaining ships formed a cohesive strike force, weaving through enemy fire, dodging explosions, and moving with precision. They targeted the core, aiming every blast at the weak points, fighting with everything they had left. Then it happened. A massive explosion rocked the warship. Its core breached, and its massive form began to crack apart. The Council's flagship was destroyed. The leader's heart raced. They had done it. The tide of the battle had finally turned. With the destruction of the warship, the Council's fleet began to retreat, its forces scattering into the void. The Resistance had won. But even as the battle wound down, a strange feeling lingered in the air. Victory was theirs, but it didn't come without a price. The leader surveyed the battlefield, the wreckage of ships, the silence of space settling over them. The cost had been high, too high. As the surviving ships of the Resistance regrouped, the leader's mind drifted back to Earth. The people who had fought so hard, the ones who had endured so much, would now have the chance to rebuild. Council had been dealt a decisive blow, but the true work was just beginning. There would be a long road ahead, a road of healing, of reclaiming what had been lost. "We've won," the leader said, their voice low, almost in disbelief. But there was no time for celebration, no time for rest. The leader knew that the war was not truly over. There would always be threats in the galaxy. There would always be those who sought to control and dominate. But humanity had proven something important today. They had proven that, even in the face of impossible odds, they could fight, they could survive, and they could, together, overcome anything. The leader turned away from the view screen, looking out at the crew. They had done it. They had saved humanity. And as the final remnants of the Council's forces retreated into the depths of space, the leader allowed themselves a single, fleeting thought. Humanity would rebuild. And this time, they would not be brought to their knees.